Hey everyone, Sumo Spiffy here. Now that we've had time to recover from quick onset Banzuke reflux disease, we can move on to the March tier list. Last time we had a rough go of it, getting beat up by both the community and Goose from the Sunday morning sumo show. But that means some money goes into the pockets of two worthy charities, so, it's not all bad. As much as I might want a rematch though, the game works best with new faces, new ideas, and fewer A+ Takanosho fever dreams. So, for this one, we've got Ryan from Grand Sumo Breakdown into play. Like last time, we'll go in Banzuke order. I'll introduce Ryan's picks after the Sanyaku, Maegashira 5, 10, and the end, and we'll see how our predictions compare. Okay, let's go! Oh, one other thing before we start. Goose called us out. So, if you like the channel but you haven't subscribed, now is definitely the time. If we get there, maybe I will go to Texas in April just to look him in the eye once the deed is done. Alright, now the tier list. Starting with the top 3. Last time we put all 3 of these guys at S tier, with the logic on the injured Yokozuna being they would either do very well or drop out. The fact both struggled a bit, but did well enough to not drop out was half a miracle. However, it also showed we need to take their willingness to push through even when a Yusho was unrealistic seriously. So, Hoshoryu is S tier when healthy, but any noticeable ding changes the math, and injuries like his don't miraculously heal in a couple of months. And even though we've now seen Onosato can do work at far less than 100%, nothing currently indicates he'll be significantly improved come March. That drops both to A+. As for Aonishiki, last time I said logic should put him at A+ because he still hadn't cracked 12 wins and was more likely to go below 12 than above it. But I went S because he keeps getting better and no one's figured him out, and I'm sticking with that idea here. The biggest thing to me is that Onosato had some success in January because he found a very awkward style that guys didn't know how to attack. Given a month and a half to problem solve, some of them will come up with better plans, and Aonishiki is at the top of that list. If he can finally overcome Onosato, it's hard to see him finishing worse than 12-3. Kotozakura started 8-4 in January, lost the last 3. Lost for the first time to Hakunofuji, beat Takayasu, who'd been stomping his face over the last year. This is just what Koto does. Eventually he won't pull the last rabbit out of his hat, but we never know when that'll be. Truly the most C+ of Ozeki. Kirishima. I said 12 wins will get him to Ozeki, and you know he wants it, but I don't know how he gets it. His 11 wins in January included one over Aonishiki, a win that was so good it's sorta wild it took 4 tries for him to get it, but Aonishiki's not gonna just start losing to him now. He beat Takanosho, who he frankly should beat all the time but usually doesn't. He got to skip Takayasu on day 15, yeah he might have won, but it would have been a tougher match than Abi. He got Shishi for fuck's sake, and you want him to win one more match? I think he'll give it a good effort and get at least 9 or 10 wins, but not 12, A-. Takayasu. I was really torn between predicting a winning or losing record for Papa Bear in January, but his big smack style seems to be holding his body together and getting him just enough wins to stay afloat. You'd think Churanoumi rising to Maegashira 2 would help him, but he's 0-2 in that matchup, which would be really weird if Chura wasn't also 6-0 against Daieisho. I don't know how he does it, but we're not talking about him yet. Anyway, Papa Bear staggered to the finish line in January, but there's also no reason to think he won't be strong early once again. C+, easy pick. Wakamotoharu started 0-5, then 1-6, finished 8-7, and the only surprises were losing to Hakunofuji and beating Onosato. Hakunofuji does seem like he could start being an issue for Waka, but he's fallen far enough that there's no guarantee they'll meet. Instead, Waka gets Churanoumi, who he's 6-1 against. Otherwise, very little's changed. Peg him at C+, and hope his foot doesn't decide to fall apart. Atamifuji. Look, he had a fabulous January. Started 0-2, then never lost again except to probably the sport's next Yokozuna while beating both current Yokozuna. That's unbelievable. And it's similarly unbelievable that he'll do this again. Remember, he's had 8 tournaments well inside the Joy, the top 16. He's never finished with more than 8 wins and went 5-10 the last 2 times he was here. Yes, last Basha was at the absolute edge of the joy, but not only did he start with 8 days of Maegashira matches, he only wound up with 4 Sanyaku opponents despite Oho being the only Sanyaku member having a bad time. He essentially replaced Kotozakura, Takayasu, and Wakamotoharu with Fujinokawa, Abi, and Oshoumi. Given the role he was on, maybe he'd still have gone 3-0 against the group, but it was not the hardest schedule he could have gotten. The one he's about to see is, and I'm not going to fall into the trap of thinking maybe he's found a way to be competitive at this level. D tier. If he finds 8 wins and holds this spot, hey, I'll take the L. Ryan, for his part, disagrees with me on nearly every point. Not substantially, we're going in the same basic direction on most of these guys. Most notably, we flip-flopped all of the top 3 with him putting the Yokozuna at S and Aonishiki at A+. This absolutely makes the most sense if the Yokozuna are healthy, so I'm guessing Ryan has more faith in their Wolverine-style healing factors than I do. We're both feeling Kirishima at close but not quite finishing his Ozeki run, and of course everyone sensible has Kotozakura at C+. Takayasu at B tier says he's a little more convinced Papa Bear will keep the good vibes going than I am, and less convinced in Wakamotoharu, popping him down at C-. Hard to blame anyone for that pick when Iwaka started 0-5 in January. And then Atamifuji at C+. Oh Ryan, why would you let him hurt you like this? Well, moving on. Wakatakakage. None of Waka's losses in January were surprising unless you count having so much trouble in general with Ichiyamamoto as a surprise. But he won every match he should have, looked steadier and healthier, and there's no reason to expect something different in March. At Maegashira 1, he'll probably have a trash record to start, but turning that around is the Waka way. B tier, and given his fortunate boost to 1 East, any winning record will see him back at Komusubi. Right? Yoshinofuji. He keeps looking like he should do a little better than his actual results. I mean, he did fine in January, but scoring 2 Kinboshi and still needing matches against Shishi and Oshoma at the end to reach 8 wins is not a great sign. Yeah, Aonishiki needed another miracle Kubanage to beat him, so that's probably still a solid matchup. But of the other 6 losses, Kirishima's the only guy he's beaten even once. I'm still leaning 8-7 more than 7-8, so C+. But he's gonna have his first losing record in Makuuchi sooner rather than later. Fujinokawa. I was initially tempted to drop Fuji into F tier. I know Midori Fuji once hung out in the high Maegashira ranks for a bit and didn't do too badly, but the rest of the joy is a lot better now than a few years ago. And the only little-ish dude to do work near the Sanyaku recently, Hiradoumi, has 15 kilos on Fuji. Add to that the fact there's a lot of mobility to go with the size in the top ranks, and it's hard to find a lot of wins here. But he's so fast and so strong that I don't think he's going to get completely mollywopped. 6 wins seems likely, so into D tier he goes. If he somehow hits 8 wins, expect it to be more because his opponents haven't seen enough of him yet. Churanoumi. Chura is becoming like Sadanoumi to me, a guy who can't match the athleticism of guys further up the ranks but just never quits. Unlike Sadanoumi though, Chura isn't just a grinder, he's finding new and better ways to get the job done. Unfortunately, his growing ability to abuse an opponent's weaknesses doesn't do much when you're fighting a bunch of guys with minimal weaknesses. Fuji escaped F tier, Chura doesn't. To be frank, I just hope he's not a smoking crater by the end. Hiradoumi. So I've been looking at a lot of Hiradoumi's matches, trying to learn about his tachi-ai timing, his false starts, all that. There will be a video with much more detail, but the short version is his opponents adjust, and the only 2 guys near him he might be able to abuse are Oho and Wakamotoharu. And Waka keeps finding ways to beat him regardless. If you look at his worst matchups over the last year, Hoshoryu, Onosato, Aonishiki, Kotozakura, Kirishima, Waka Prime, and Yoshi are all on that list. Go back a little more, and Takayasu and Daieisho end up there as well. That's 9 guys he 100% has to fight. The way he always tries to find little advantages means F tier is a little too hopeless, so D tier is the only placement that makes sense. Oho. A disastrous 4-11 January, but his wins were over Aonishiki, Kirishima, Kotozakura, and Ichiyamamoto. I don't know what the f to tell you. It feels like he's capable of doing even worse, but he hasn't had fewer than 6 wins at a Maegashira rank since 2023, so C-. It's either that or he decides he wants to be there for once and goes 12-3 again, and I'm sure as hell not banking on that. Daieisho. Alright, I got a little froggy with the B tier pick in January. In my defense, he lost pretty much all the matches I would have expected and still only finished 7-8 because of 2 Henkas. He's usually not quite so vulnerable to those, and each basho is a little closer to full health. At least, it should be. Anyway, I'm gonna be smarter and just say C+ here. Takanosho. I tried to get ahead of things and wrote some of these before the Banzuke came out, and this was my first line for Takanosho when I thought he'd go to 5 East. Any higher, and we'd have another D tier wrestler. 4 West is higher, no avoiding the Sanyaku entirely now. D tier it is. And now, I hope y'all are ready to hear C+ and C- a lot. Welcome to the Chanko Stew of Makuuchi, where everyone got dropped in and you have no idea which parts will rise to the top. Abi got hurt, went 8-22 across 2 bashos and faded to the bottom of the division. Then he went 10-5 and bounced back up. So, is he good to go? Quick answer, no. It was genuinely impressive to watch him find ways of winning in January that we simply did not see in the past. However, he's famous for his utterly bonkers pushing attack, and despite starting 6-0, he didn't win via pushout until day 6, and that was against little man Asakoryu. Basically, Abi's found some new ways to fight, but his arms aren't much healthier, and now he's at a rank where it's going to be a lot harder to make new ideas work. If he'd landed at rank 6, I'd have more hope for a winning record. At 5 East, any level of success will probably put him against the Sanyaku, and nothing about January, even his win over Takayasu, suggests he's ready for much of that high rank action. C-. Kotoshoho. Koto's never done well at ranks this high. Part of that was due to injury, and given that guys have been pretty healthy of late, there's a decent chance he avoids the Sanyaku despite being fairly close to the Joy. But I was so torn between C- and D that I decided to wait until the end of the tier list and come back. If I had enough D tier picks, I'd put him at C-, if not, D. And he goes to C-. If I say more, I'll spoil stuff. Onward! For Ryan's picks, starting with the expected struggle bus riders, he's the first not me person to officially have an F tier pick. If the community also sticks truer at F tier, that will truly be a sign of hopelessness. We're both expecting Fuji to struggle and Kotoshoho to not do that well. Same for Hiradoumi, although Ryan's a little higher than me at C-. That's pretty normal. Basically, everyone expects more out of Hiradoumi at these ranks than I do. Getting into the more positive picks, aside from our agreement on Yoshinofuji at C+, this is where we separate a little bit more. He's got Daieisho at B and Wakatakakage at C+, so we flip-flopped there. Abi at B tier seems optimistic given his rank. Then again, me sticking him at C- is very much genius or idiot territory, so Ryan's probably the more logical one there. Oho at C+ is, well, when you see him on good days, this makes more sense. We might just carry different views on how many good days he's likely to have. And Takanosho at C+ is, well, it's not Takanosho at A+, so there's that. Ichiyamamoto. I never enjoy watching the light of hope go out of someone's eyes mid-basho, but it was hard to miss in Ichi. When I thought he was going to 4 West, this basho looked pretty doomed too, because even the early Maegashira matchups weren't great. But at 6 West, he escapes the Sanyaku and replaces them with opponents like Gonoyama and Roga, giving him a semblance of hope. Still C- because the neighborhood is rough, but he's got a much better chance of hanging in there than he would have further up the line. Onokatsu. Okay, he's had 3 straight 7-8s. The first 2 he was Makikoshi after 13 days with a 5-8 record and got 2 opponents doing even worse to help prop him up. January, he was 5-6, reached 7 wins with consecutive walkovers against Nishikifuji and Hakunofuji, and still blew his best chance at 8 wins by taking his first loss ever against Tobizaru. He's looked worse every time out since he got smoked at Maegashira 3, and I'm done believing in him until he offers some evidence he's figured things out. C-. Oshoma. Unlike Onokatsu, when Oshoma got his shit ruined at Maegashira 4, he came back with 3 strong bashos in a row. Then he got dumpstered at Komusubi and bounced back with 9 wins. After another Maegashira 4 thrashing, I figured he'd bounce back once more at rank 7, and for 5 days he was exactly that guy. Then he got rolled by nearly everyone. Hanging in at 7 East again, I still think he's likely to do well, but I'm not going to go over the top like I did last time. Simple C+ for Oshoma. Hakunofuji. If you've seen these tier lists a few times, you might have noticed I stopped marking guys as being potentially affected by injury. At this point, I figure I can cover that base by just bringing it up, and so it is with Hakunofuji. Even though he hasn't put up dazzling records since his return from shoulder surgery, he's definitely improved to where he should be a shoo-in for a winning record outside the Joy. But he really messed up his foot in January, and those kinds of injuries are notorious for slowing a wrestler down the next basho out. At 7 West, I still want to put him in B tier. Then I think about how Daieisho's shown the potential limitations of someone with a lower body injury even at a rank they should crush. On the flip side, Izegahama will help the kid figure out how to work around whatever effect the injury has and do the best he can, and he's still simply better than the guys around him. Top a C+, and hopefully the cautiousness doesn't backfire on me. Ura. From May 2023 through May 2025, Ura was in the Joy, that top 16 wrestlers, usually at the edge of that group, but in it all the same. I bring this up because it meant he always had some Sanyaku matches. When he finally didn't have to deal with them in July, he went 8-4 before Wakatakakage banged up his leg and sent him home. Then, at 8 East in September, he went 10-5, his best record since 2021. I was cautiously optimistic about his prospects in March when I thought he'd land at 6 East. 8 East doesn't actually change his schedule much in the first week to 10 days, but being more likely to fight down in rank rather than dragged in against the Sanyaku later on makes him a much easier C+ pick. Shodai. Last basho, I was pretty high on Shodai's prospects. He had a ton of good matchups around him to the point that I was tempted to place him in B tier, and I only held back because Shodai is, as we'll recall, the Dark Lord of Chaos. But his January struggles were for a much more mundane reason. The schedule just didn't give him many of those opponents he succeeds against. Oshoma, Nishikifuji, Tobizaru, Abi, none of them showed up on his dance card. Combine that with Fujinokawa and Hiradoumi finally figuring out what to do against him, and it was all bad. This time, a lot of those good matches are further away, though most of them could still happen. The more guaranteed part of his schedule looks pretty 50-50, so his late basho schedule could do a lot to determine his fate. I'll go with this. Ever since he became a mid-rank regular 2 years ago, he's only had a winning record at a single-digit rank once, high C-. Tokihayate. Time Storm is improving. He had 4 wins in January against opponents where he's still worse in the head-to-head, and he didn't get lucky or on a roll. He's figuring things out. So when I see a bunch of rough matchups awaiting him on his first trip to the single-digit ranks, I can't count him out. The bigger issue is that rank 10 fights mostly down in rank, and rank 9 mostly fights up. Thus, history with these opponents aside, his schedule is just going to be tougher in general. Low C-, avoiding the temptation to plop him all the way into D tier. Tamawashi. There was a general sense that, being just out of the Sanyaku's range in January, Tamawashi would be able to do some work. Maybe he did some work on his house because it wasn't getting done in the ring. His 5-10 is the worst record he's had in a tournament with no Sanyaku opponents since 2016. The only truly Sanyaku level guys he faced were Daieisho and, I guess, Atamifuji, and he beat them. The guys he lost to are some of the guys he's gonna see in March. I'm not trying to ring any alarm bells or say the Reaper has come for his career, but let's not forget that between his 2022 Yusho and 2025 June Yusho, he spent essentially 2 full years spinning his wheels in the mid-ranks. 7 or 8 wins at this level was very normal, and Papa Time is always a threat. All the same, on the strength of a probably friendly schedule, I'll pin him at low C+. Also slinking in at C+ is Gonoyama. There's never a guarantee someone's hurt without a report confirming it, but January was pretty strong evidence he's not okay. And that's not shocking. His body and style make it quite possible he's done something to his neck a la Takakeisho, which would explain why he can't apply the same level of force we're used to seeing. Even being at rank 10 and fighting down the ladder carries some danger, given that Asanoyama, Fuji and a bunch of mobile guys are there, but 7 wins seems like a safe floor. Roga, 7 and 8 C-. I know Roga has fans who would probably appreciate a deeper dive into his odds, but this is what he does. In January, he beat Gonoyama for the third time in 10 matches on day 1, still staggered to 3-7 behind a few losses to opponents he tends to beat, saved himself from an early Makikoshi by winning over Oshoma for only the third time in 12, and got just the escape he needed on day 15 to go 7-8 again. I predicted his strong performance when he came back from Juryo because the schedule looked very friendly, but without similar circumstances in play, sometimes you just go with what fate seems to have in store for a guy. There's a whole lot of positivity from Ryan for this group. I can't say I disagree too much. We're broadly predicting decent results from Oshoma, Tamawashi, and Gonoyama, and we recognize Roga's meme life at C-. Ryan's got Shodai at D, a little further down than me, but the same basic idea. He's more willing to bank on Hakunofuji and Ura getting those 8 wins than I am. Like the Yokozuna, Hakunofuji's placement makes complete sense if you figure he'll be mostly healthy. Ura seems like an 8 or 9 win guy. I might just see his schedule as a bit too tough for a guarantee of a Kachikoshi. Similarly, Ichiyamamoto's done well enough outside the Joy in general that C+ is a pretty logical placement, and I have a feeling more people will agree with putting Onokatsu at that level than dropping him down like I did. Tokihayate at B tier though, that's a spicy meatball. He's creeping his way up the ladder, but he's never had more than 8 wins at a career high rank in the division, so predicting 8 minimum is showing a lot of faith. It's not impossible, I just wonder if Toki's a guy who needs to hit a new level, get beat up a bit, then come back with those lessons learned and do better later. We shall see. Shishi. His fall off from 8-2 to 9-6 in January essentially showed where the line of demarcation was between the guys he should beat and those he shouldn't. At 11 East, most of his opponents will be lower in rank, several of whom he's been quite good against. Takayumi, Asakoryu, Tobizaru, Chiyoshoma. He's 3-0 lifetime against both Kotoeho and Fujiseiun. I think that means less against Fuji, but it might give him a nice confidence boost. Midorifuji beat him twice in a row, but the first of those was from a Shishi hair pull, so that's probably still a good matchup for him. The wrestlers above him tend to be tough, but if he pulls Tokihayate, that's been a good match too. I am genuinely tempted to go C+ here. Shishi fans have actual reason for hope. The only reason I'm going C- is that his opening schedule should look something like Oshoumi, Roga, Asakoryu, Gonoyama, Asanoyama, Tamawashi. He should be a favorite against Asakoryu, but I don't know about the rest, and Shishi is a wrestler who has his big tournaments when he gets in a flow. If his early schedule doesn't let him find his footing, it'll be tougher sledding. Oshoumi. 3 of the guys he beat in January are in Juryo now. I suspect Asanoyama will have a better plan for him this time too. But 2 other wins came against Hiradoumi and Churanoumi, who are now in the Joy, and better than most of the wrestlers Oshoumi will see this time. He went through a whole basha without bandages in January, and if he can do it again, I'm locking him in at C+. Asakoryu. When Asakoryu beat Ryuden on day 1, but had it taken away due to a hair pull, I thought his basha was doomed. Instead, it seemed to piss him off. Match after match, it felt like he decided he was going to hit dudes with literally his whole chest, and it paid off. Now the question is not can he keep it up, but will he? Did he learn something he's going to take with him into future tournaments, or is that something he was able to carry for only one basho? Maybe it's too physically taxing to use that strategy all day, every day. I guess we'll find out. By the numbers, he's a C- pick. I think he's improving past what the numbers say, but for this basho, I'm still putting him at C-. He's been great against Kotoeho, but not so much against Fujiseiun, and I'm not sure how he's going to beat Fuji Ryoga, and those 3 matches may make all the difference. Asanoyama. The best and worst of current Asanoyama was on display in January. The 9-3 start and absolute dive bomb finish. His knee held up reasonably well, but was obviously giving him problems near the end. Wakatakakage is the most obvious comparison, and it's not favorable for Asanoyama, but that's likely because he's a little older and has suffered other significant injuries during his career. If he's getting his sea legs back under him, I don't think 11 wins is off the table, and he should be able to hit at least 9 again, so I'm putting him at A-. Tobizaru. Before Abi cratered down to this part of the division, Tobi was the one who needed to find different ways of fighting than he was used to. It's still kind of a work in progress for him. He's in that liminal sumo space where he can't afford to sit out, but is also in no shape to fight to his capacity. Combine that with the fact of his good matchups, he's only really got Mitakeumi and Chiyoshoma near him, a lot more bad, and some hungry Juryo guys coming up, and March looks like a tough ride. If he wasn't as clever at finding ways to win as he is, I might stick him in D tier, but he goes in C- instead. Fujiseiun. I put 16 West Fuji at C+. At 13 West, his schedule isn't that much different in the first week. He'll face the absolute bottom of the division later rather than right away, and might miss one or two of them, but it's very similar. The real difference is that when they match guys up by record later on, rank still makes a difference. If you've got, say, Maegashira 6, 10, 13, and 16 West all at 5 and 7, and the first two and last two already fought, your next move is 6 versus 13 and 10 versus 16. So he can end up with a tougher schedule that way, regardless of whether he's doing well or poorly. As for Fuji himself, Oshoumi is a reasonable analog. I see Oshoumi as having more upside, but Fuji is much less beset by injury. So I want to be positive, but this one's tough because Fuji seems very much like a 6 to 9 win guy at this rank. I'm gonna go C- for this reason. Fuji's been on a serious heater over the last 4 bashos, but nearly all of his wins have been against guys who either never made it to Makuuchi, made it once and were basically uncompetitive, or are now too busted for that level. I don't think he'll struggle horribly, and I'm pretty confident he'll stay in the division for May, but 6 wins seems more likely than 9. Chiyoshoma. As noted in the January recap, the Henka King got Henka 2.5 times last basho, which should mark the beginning of the end on its own. But he's also got Fujiseiun and Mitakeumi as matches where he should be favored, and far more where he's not. It feels like a C-, but I'm tired of saying C something, so he goes D tier. Nishikifuji. This is where Nishikifuji becomes tough to predict coming off injuries. He, more than most, looks like he's fighting very normally when he's hurt, and the only sign of a problem is in the results. But we're gauging results here, so what to expect? At first, I reflexively put him in C+, but he finished 9 and 6 in his one healthy basho back, so anything less than that health-wise makes him a C- pick. Cold logic, but history says his injuries issues linger, and I'm not going to count on that changing. Midori Fuji. Poor Midori is now one more 6 and 9 from tanking back into Juryo, and I'm not convinced he can avoid it. He's had 3 winning records in the last 13 bashos. One was an 8 and 7 where he had a walkover win. The 9 and 6 last March was solid, but his 9 wins in July look more and more like an outlier, with 3 victories over not ready for primetime opposition, and wins 8 and 9 coming via a Shishi hair pull and Ura going Kyujo. He does have a handful of good matchups, and he always finds a way to not get destroyed, but yet again, C- seems correct. Mitakeumi. Oh boy keeps hanging on, but that thread's getting thinner basho after basho. Making things worse, and we haven't pointed this out explicitly yet, Ryuden, Hatsuyama, and Tomokaze are getting replaced by Fujiseiun, Fujiryoga, and Kotoeho. That's definitely a tougher group. And on top of the Asas not having to fight each other, the Fujis won't face off either. That means he's almost certain to fight all 5. 7 and 8 seems like a best case scenario, making Mitakeumi a regrettable D tier pick. Asahakuryu. Alright, I got way too hyped for this dude in January. In my defense, he looked like that guy for the first week before everything collapsed, and he had to salvage his Kachikoshi with 2 wins over Juryo guys in the last 3 days. To his credit though, he clutched up and made it happen, and I think we'll see him in Makuuchi for a while, barring injury. My vibe is that he has an excellent chance at a winning record, and I'm still tempted to place him in B tier, but January showed he's not realistically a 10-win wrestler at this point, so high C+ is more correct. Kinbozan. Okay. Kinbo Slice actually went 4 and 11 at exactly Maegashira 8 West once before. He followed it up with another 4 and 11 at 12 West and tanked back into Juryo. So we need to decide, is this more a mental or physical issue? And I say decide because 1, it's probably both, and 2, we have no real evidence one way or the other. Yeah, it sometimes looks like he doesn't want to be there, but that's more likely if he's hurt, right? Let's split this into 3 options: big comeback, hold the line, or collapse. We'll scratch out big comeback right away. Being low ranked doesn't help so much when he's got the Asas around, the Fujis, hell, Chiyoshoma usually whips him. He's gonna have to show up for real to have another big score, and that doesn't seem likely. So does he hang in or fall apart? Well, he's had absolutely disastrous starts to his last 4 bashos, so he needs some early wins. Going by January's schedule, he should start with Asahakuryu, Fujiryoga, Kotoeho, Midori Fuji, Oshoma, and Nishiki-Fuji. That's not too bad all things considered. Asahakuryu is probably a coin flip, Fuji-Ryoga should blast him, Kotoeho is beatable, the Midori-Fuji fight might mean a lot, he used to wreck Midori but has now lost 2 of 3, and he can definitely beat a wounded Nishiki-Fuji. There are enough potential wins here that I'm tempted to go C+, but if he gets on enough of a roll for 9 wins, he could easily get 10 or more. So I'll put him at C-, predicting he shows just enough life to hang in the division for May. Fuji-Ryoga. This is another tricky one. It shouldn't be. We should expect Fuji to steamroll his way to 8 wins, then see how he does much further up the line. And that could easily happen. But falling off from a 13-2 Yusho in November to 9-6 in March was kinda shocking. Asahakuryu went from 13-2 to 10-5, a 10-5 that looked like kind of a struggle, and Fuji's no doubt better than him. Fuji's core issue right now is that if an opponent gets their arms under his and takes his belt, he doesn't know what to do about it. Granted, at that point there aren't a ton of options, but there are some. He looks helpless though, and can't do more than just lean forward, hoping his weight does the work. Preferably he'd learn to avoid that situation, but that's still a work in progress. So against someone like Mitakeumi, Fuji should be a major favorite, but Mitakeumi's someone who will try to do exactly this. If he withstands the initial push, he's got a great chance at beating Fuji, a much better chance than he should have. On the other hand, Fuji still hit 9 wins blasting through guys. Plus, part of his losses to Nishinoryu and Wakanosho was from those guys coming in with very inspired sumo, and if Fuji faces anyone like that in March, it probably means they're both doing well. For very different reasons than Asanoyama, I think Fuji has a 9-win floor, and 12 wins is just not gonna happen. A- is the call. And Kotoeho. Baby Shiko bro keeps coming into Makuuchi at the wrong time. First he got hurt between bashos and then got stun-locked by every competent fighter in the division. Now he's healthy, as far as I know, and he's stuck with an absolute bulldozer of a schedule. He's beaten Asahakuryu and Chiyoshoma a couple times each. If he gets a Juryo match, it'll be with Ryuden, who he beat in January to earn this spot. A second Juryo match would be with Sadanoumi, who he's 2-0 against. That's a lot of ifs though. He'll come out with energy and cause some problems, but if he needs both inspired sumo and at least 1, maybe 2 Juryo matches just to get to 8 wins, that's asking for too many things to come together at once. We finished the list in D tier. And one more set of Ryan picks. We got a lot of overlap here. Asanoyama at A-, Asahakuryu at C+, all the C- picks, and half a D tier as well. His other D tiers, Shishi and Nishiki-Fuji, I have at C-. Even though there's only a 1-tier gap though, I think I'm a lot more positive about those guys than he is. Like I said, there's an argument for Shishi at C+, and Nishiki-Fuji is much more a health issue than a skill issue. Oshoumi at B versus my C+ strikes me as different opinions on where he'll hit the wall. Fuji-Ryoga at B versus my A- seems like he's making more of a safe pick, which is probably the more sensible play. Asakoryu and Fujiseiun at C+, he probably expects them to stay on their current roles more than I do. And Kotoeho at C+, hey, Ryan, feel free to leave a comment and tell us why you have this faith in Kotoeho, because I can't figure it out at all. And that's the tier list for January 2026. Once again, thanks to Ryan from Grand Sumo Breakdown for joining the competition and trying to siphon off my money to quote-unquote good causes. Goose and I had 28 different picks, Ryan and I have 25 different picks, which is making me wonder if actually I'm the crazy one. Anyway, community tier list live stream. The vote was close, but Saturday morning finished slightly in front, and I already kinda wanted to try that. So that's what we're gonna do. It's gonna be Saturday, February 28th, 11 AM US Eastern Time. Sorry to Australia for the inconvenience. Also, get your tier list picks in. Link is in the description. If you just want to vote on certain wrestlers, that's okay. And if it means we have 48 entries that only put in a vote for Shishi, evenly split between S and F tier, that's absolutely fine. Other than that, have a great day, go adopt a sumo kitten, and I'll see you Saturday.